English vibe. Yeah, easy English vibe.
Eloise, before we commence today's audio transmission, I wanted to ascertain if you've had the opportunity to utilize the new coffee filtration apparatus in the break room. It's truly exquisite.
Noah, please stop. You sound like a Victorian ghost trying to write a LinkedIn post.
I was going for distinguished intellectual.
You missed by a few centuries, but you've actually perfectly illustrated the trap we're discussing today. You tried to sound smarter by using bigger, more complex words, commence, ascertain, utilize, but psychology suggests you actually achieved the exact opposite.
Wait, using big words makes me sound less smart? That feels counterintuitive. I thought the whole point of a broad vocabulary was to show off your cognitive horsepower.
It is counterintuitive, but the data is pretty damning. There was a fascinating study conducted by Daniel Oppenheimer at Princeton University, ominously titled Consequences of Erudite Vernacular Utilized Irrespective of Necessity. He took text samples and progressively replaced simple words with longer, more complex synonyms. He found that as the text became more complex, readers consistently rated the author's intelligence lower.
So my attempt to utilize the apparatus just made me sound insecure?
Exactly. True intelligence signals efficiency. If you can explain a complex idea simply, you understand it. If you need a thesaurus to say drink coffee, you're hiding something. So today, I want to walk you through 10 phrases that actually make you sound smarter. And none of them are $10 words. They are phrases that signal critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and strategic vision.
I am fully ready to be deprogrammed. But before we get to the list, I want to dig into why and I think a lot of people, have this instinct to reach for the fancy word. Where does that come from, historically? Is it just school?
It's way deeper than school, Noah. It's actually baked into the DNA of the English language itself. We have to look back to 1066, the Norman Conquest. When the French-speaking Normans invaded England, they became the ruling class. The peasantry spoke Old English, a Germanic language. The aristocracy spoke French.
Right, I remember this from history class. This is why we have different words for animals and the meat they produce.
Precisely. The Anglo-Saxon peasant in the field raised the cow, Germanic origin, but the French aristocrat at the dining table ate beef, from the French boeuf. The peasant raised the pig, the noble ate pork. This created a linguistic hierarchy that exists to this day. The Germanic words start, end, help, buy are seen as common or basic. The French or Latinate equivalents, commence, conclude, facilitate, purchase, are perceived as prestige vocabulary.
That is wild. So when I say commence instead of start, I'm subconsciously trying to signal that I'm the guy at the head of the table, not the guy in the field.
You're putting on a linguistic crown, yes. But in the modern world, especially in a modern professional context, that hierarchy has inverted slightly. We value clarity and speed. The person who clings to the old prestige markers often looks out of touch. The smartest person in the room today isn't the one using French aristocracy words. It's the one using phrases that drive the conversation forward.
Okay, let's drive this conversation forward then. Let's get into these 10 phrases. I'm guessing synergy isn't on the list.
Definitely not. We can talk about why corporate jargon fails later, but let's start with the first category, intellectual humility and openness. The first phrase on my list is, help me understand.
Help me understand. It sounds a bit submissive, like I'm admitting I'm lost.
It's actually a power move in disguise. Think about a heated meeting. Someone proposes an idea you think is terrible. If you say, that won't work, you trigger their defense mechanisms. They dig in. But if you say, help me understand how this solves our distribution problem, you are forcing them to explain their logic without being aggressive. You're positioning yourself as a curious learner, which disarms people, but you're effectively auditing their thinking.
I see. You're handing them a rope to either pull themselves up or hang themselves with.
A crude metaphor, but accurate. It signals emotional intelligence, which is a key component of how we perceive smart people today. That leads directly to phrase number 2. I'm inclined to think.
Instead of just saying, I think,
Yes, I think or I believe can sound rigid. I'm inclined to think introduces a layer of nuance. It suggests that your opinion is based on current evidence, but is subject to change if new facts emerge. It signals that you are not dogmatic. Smart people know that certainty is often a sign of ignorance. Signaling that you are leaning rather than standing makes you sound more scientifically minded.
it definitely sounds more measured. It reminds me of the phrase strong opinions loosely held.
Exactly. That's the vibe. Now, let's move to the analytical category. These are phrases that show you aren't just listening, you're processing structure. Phrase number 3 is, let's walk through the logic here.
I like that. It slows things down.
It does. In a fast-paced world, the person who can slow time down and look at the gears of the argument is the leader. It moves the conversation from opinions to mechanics. Similarly, phrase number 4 is one of my favorites for breaking deadlocks. There's a distinction without a difference here.
Ooh, that's a lawyer phrase. Distinction without a difference.
It is, but it's incredibly useful in general life. It means two things are technically different, but in practice, they have the same effect. For example, if we're arguing about whether to cut the marketing budget by 10% or increase the sales target by 10% to meet a margin goal, you might say, in terms of team morale, that's a distinction without a difference. Both will cause stress.
It cuts through the noise. It says, stop arguing about semantics. Let's look at the outcome. It feels very executive.
It is. It shows you're focused on impact, not labels, which brings us to phrase number 5, which is pure strategy. What is the long game here?
The long game. I hear that in movies. You're not seeing the long game, kid.
It's cinematic, but practical. Most people are reactive. They look at the email in front of them, the fire they need to put out today. Asking what is the long game forces everyone to zoom out. It signals that you are thinking about second and third order consequences. It's what psychologists call temporal distancing, stepping back from the immediate moment to see the trajectory.
That's a great term, temporal distancing. I feel like that's the definition of wisdom, not getting caught in the immediate emotion.
Right, and to do that effectively, you sometimes need to argue against yourself. That's phrase number 6. Let's steel man that argument.
Steel man? I know straw man, which is when you make a weak version of your opponent's argument to easily destroy it.
Steelman is the opposite. It means taking the opposing view and making the strongest possible version of it, even if you disagree. If you're in a debate and you say, before I respond, I want to steelman your position to make sure I've got it right, you instantly become the most credible person in the room. You aren't trying to win on a technicality, you're engaging with the best version of the idea.
That is high-level intellectual honesty. It's terrifying, though. What if their steelman is better than my argument?
Then you change your mind, Noah. That's the smartest thing you can do. Being willing to update your priors is peak intelligence. But let's look at a phrase for when things are getting muddy. Phrase number 7, correlate versus causate. Or simply asking, are we confusing correlation with causation?
Classic stats class. Ice cream sales go up in summer, murder rates go up in summer, therefore ice cream causes murder.
Exactly. But you'd be shocked how often this happens in high stakes business or personal decisions. We changed the logo and sales went down. Therefore, the logo is bad. Maybe the market crashed that week. Asking this question shows you have data literacy, which is a modern requirement for sounding smart.
It feels like a lot of these are about slowing down the rush to judgment. Help me understand. Walk through the logic. Correlation versus causation. It's all about putting a brake on impulsivity.
That is the thread connecting them all. Intelligence is impulse control. Phrase number 8 is about handling complexity. There is some nuance here we need to unpack.
Nuance. I feel like that word gets thrown around a lot, but using it as a verb almost, unpacking the nuance, is helpful.
It signals that you refuse to accept binary thinking. We live in a polarized world, good versus bad, success versus failure. The person who says, there's nuance here, is the adult in the room. It invites a deeper level of analysis.
Okay, we've got 2 left. What's number 9?
Number 9 is for when you need to reframe a conversation that's gone off the rails. What problem are we actually trying to solve?
That sounds simple, but I've been in hour-long meetings where I realized halfway through that no one knew the answer to that.
It happens constantly. It's called goal drift. People get attached to their solutions. We need an app. We need a podcast. And forget the problem. Asking this cuts through the fluff. It anchors the conversation back to reality. It's the ultimate clarity phrase.
And number 10. Bring us home.
Number 10 is a phrase that signals you are thinking about resources and trade-offs. What is the opportunity cost?
Economics 101.
Yes, but applied to life. It's not just about money. If we spend 2 hours discussing the color of the napkins, the opportunity cost is 2 hours we didn't spend discussing the menu. Smart people understand that everything has a cost, especially time and attention. Invoking opportunity cost shows you value efficiency and prioritization.
I love that list, but I want to pivot back to something you mentioned earlier, the corporate speak trap, because some people think saying, let's circle back and leverage our synergies makes them sound smart. Why does that fail?
It fails because it lacks specific meaning. This actually has a historical origin, too. In the 1930s, there was a shift in American business management. Before the 30s, management language was industrial, efficiency, output, machines. But then came the human relations movement, led by researchers like Elton Mayo. They realized workers had feelings and psychological needs.
So corporate speak was an attempt to be nice?
In a way, it was an attempt to sound professional and psychological rather than mechanical. But over the decades, it metastasized. Words like synergy, which just means working together, or ideation, thinking, became tribal signals. They became a way to show you belonged to the managerial class. But today, because they are so overused, they signal a lack of original thought. If you say, let's touch base offline to pivot our paradigm, you sound like a randomly generated algorithm.
It's the opposite of steelman or nuance. It's autopilot.
Exactly. Jargon obfuscates, intelligence clarifies. That's the golden rule. If you look at people like Richard Feynman, the famous physicist, he could explain quantum mechanics to a freshman. He didn't use big words to prove he was smart. He used simple analogies because he was smart.
So if I want to sound smart, I should stop trying to sound smart?
You should stop trying to sound impressive. Focus on being effective. Use phrases that open doors, clarify logic, and bridge gaps. That is what true intelligence sounds like.
Well, Eloise, I'm inclined to think this was a very productive session. The opportunity cost of listening to this episode was definitely worth it.
I see what you did there, and I'll accept it.
We'll be back next week. Until then, keep it simple.